If you're wondering where else you can find the Smark Foundation podcast, you can stream our show on Pandora, Spotify, and nearly anywhere else you normally stream your podcasts from, including our home at rss.com. We're also on YouTube, featuring not only full episodes of our show, but individual segments from each episode for easier content digestion. For any of those outlets, just type Smark Foundation Podcast into the search bar to find us. If you'd like to interact with us directly, we're very active on our new social media home, Blue Sky. You can contact the show at smarkfndnpodcast.bsky.social for general pro wrestling or podcast comments. And if you want to get to know us each a little bit more on a personal level, Aaron's personal account is at aaronsmark.bsky.social, and Adam's is at adamsmarkfndnpodcast.bsky.social. If you'd like to further support our show, you can visit our shop at smarkfoundationpodcast.printful.me to purchase various merchandise with our show's logo on it. Wear your SFP t-shirt or hoodie around town and spread the word about the show that strives to bring fans together around what's great about pro wrestling today, brought to you by a couple of everyday elder millennial wrestling fan dads. Now back to the show.
All right, so we know that the Royal Rumble technically started first, but considering it's a bigger show than Collision, this is where we put our hope spot. So, again, Collision was the wrestling centric show, although it continues to do a lot to move storylines forward in backstage interviews and tight little spots. The timing on it is really, really crisp. This was a double taping. So the crowd wasn't as big as they were for Dynamite. They weren't quite as animated as they were for Dynamite. That just kind of happens with double taping. 4 hours of wrestling is a lot. And then that doesn't even count, the dark match stuff, the crowd gets to see before Dynamite actually starts. So it's, it wasn't like the best crowd, but the wrestlers did their job and they got hot for some of it. So yeah, Nick Wayne and Nick Wayne.
Nick Wayne.
Nick Wayne, ladies and gentlemen, continuing to prove that he is just an incredible prodigy. I loved the fact that Nick Sabian, who he was teaming with, finally got on TV in a match. I think this might be the first time he's actually wrestled since joining the Patriarchy.
Maybe, yeah, you might be right.
They faced off against Hook and Samoa Joe, and they took advantage. Hook was put in a position that he's not used to being, which is being the face in peril. Hook has been booked to look pretty darn strong in singles competition ever since he debuted, and so this was an interesting thing to see him play the Morton to Samoa Joe's Robert Gibson. Because what are you gonna do? Make Samoa Joe the babyface in peril? What? No. Sabian, they tried to do the walk away spot with Sabian doing like a springboard off the top rope. They tried to play it off as the walk away spot, but Sabian just slipped on the rope. Stuff happens, oops. But I like how Shivani tried to play it off, but then a few minutes later, as like they tried to hand wave it, but then Nigel McGuinness, he's all like, yeah, they must have put something on that top rope to make it slippery so that Kip Sabian couldn't land that springboard move. So like both different ways of writing it off, the babyface way of just like, oh, we're going to pretend this didn't happen and that was something else, and the heel way of making excuses for the heel.
Yeah.
It's
Nigel's
just
great at that too.
I thought that was that was just two different ways of approaching the same thing. I wish they had been on the same page so that they could have picked one and gone with it. But I thought it was an interesting, I'm glad it happened the way it did because it was an interesting thing to see happen in real time. Just the two different approaches, the two different schools of thought. Yeah, so like At the end, Hook plays Ricky Morton for a while, and then he finally makes the tag, and Joe just destroys. Like Joe destroys. I think
everything.
He may have hit like 2 moves on Sabian, and then the Muscle Buster 1, 2, 3, and then it's over. Yeah, like Joe wasn't getting paid by the hour. Afterwards, the patriarchy attacks from behind, and Christian stomps Joe's head into the metal briefcase thing. I don't know if he knows, but Joe's a Samoan. That shouldn't work.
No, he's just gonna be madder later.
Oh yeah, I'll bet.
Yeah, he just made him madder. That's all.
Yeah, you never really get one up on Samoa Joe. You just make him mad for later. Cope then cuts a promo in the back, and I didn't like the promo. I knew what he was trying to do, but anytime I just have a personal aversion to people saying that, we paved the way for you. It's like, okay, you want a medal?
Yeah.
You've got 12 world titles. I think that's medal enough, don't you?
Yeah.
Like, I just, it rubs me the wrong way, because it just, wrestling has evolved and continues to evolve and will always continue to evolve. And that is not to say that you shouldn't respect. What was it? Mustafa Ali said it in a promo a couple years ago. It's like, how can we? How did he put it? I think it was like, how can we respect the road that you paved if you won't get off the road? It's like, it reminded me of that. And to be fair, Cope's presence in AEW has not been what this promo was. He's helped out the younger guys. He's had matches with the younger guys. He's made them look good. He elevated the TNT championship for a little while after he took it off Christian, which was already elevated because he was holding it. The only reason he dropped the belt was because he had to for injury.
Yeah.
And he was probably going to make other guys. So I don't want to make it seem like I'm anti-Cope, but I really didn't. I hate these kinds of promos because it's like, first of all, he kept calling Moxley kid, and Moxley is 40. Okay, he's not a kid. He's not a kid. He's younger than you are, Cope, but he's no kid. All right, so like you can cut that out. Secondly, like I just really, really don't think you get over with the AEW crowd by crapping on the styles that they like, even if it's implicit.
Yeah.
And this was, whether it was intentionally or not, whether it was implying it or we're just inferring it without the implication being on purpose, that's what it comes off as. It's like, I'm better than this place, and it's like, and I'm better, I'm better than you, but I'm better than this place and how it's handling things. It's like, say what you want to about the way Hangman handled the CM Punk situation. Everybody's got a take. That's fine, but I don't think that your advice is not good just because you've been in the business for a while. Your advice is good based on the merits of it, not whether not because you've been in the business for 20 years. Okay? Edge is a guy that has had success. If you want to take advice from him, go up and ask him. He's more than willing to give it to you. But and it will most likely be okay, good advice. But saying, why don't you ask me? It's like, because they were already successful. That's how they got to AEW. They trust in themselves. Yeah. Just like you trusted in yourself to get to where you are. So you're a hypocrite for saying you don't respect the business because you won't ask me for advice. Like it's a garbage argument. It's a rat bag argument. It's so arrogant and up its own butt. Like I hate it. And this is what this promo felt like. It's like, don't do that. Like I'm not anti-cope, like I said, but this was not it.
Mm-mm.
This was not a way to win people over to his side against Mox. There were different ways that you could handle it. This was not the way to go, and I think it's probably going to wind up biting him in the end. I think they're probably gonna have to turn him heel eventually, and probably sooner than they intended, because people I don't think are really gonna resonate with this promo, and they're gonna remember it because AEW fans remember everything. So, but yeah, in any case, he challenged Mox for the world title, which we all saw coming, and it's still the beginning of the year. So it's not like if you were still like following the rankings and stuff like that, our good friends AEW rankings, .bsky.social, he's got Adam Copeland at 2-0 as the number 2 contender. So I mean, because it's the beginning of the year, you can really rocket up the rankings very quickly, but just by getting a couple of wins.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, I mean, it's not like he's not deserving of a shot based on that metric, and it was not something we couldn't all see coming. But like, I don't think that they're going to move the belt to Cope. I think they're going to do it to one of their homegrown stars, whether that's Darby Allin or Eddie Kingston. I think it kind of depends on whether Darby survives Everest. Honestly.
Yeah.
If he does, I think it's Darby. If not, it'll be Eddie whenever he's ready to come back from injury.
Yeah.
Those are the two that make the most sense. I still think it's Darby because they made a point at the very beginning of this angle for Mox to go up to him and say, "You will never be a world champion," which pretty much guarantees that it's going to happen.
Yeah.
The bad guy is tempting fate; he's going to get it. So, those are things that TK loves to put in there. Those foreshadowing things, he absolutely adores it. I adore him for it. Because it gives you something to look forward to. As soon as he said that, I'm like, oh, they're going to make Darby champ. Oh, no, it's great. But anyway, it's going to be a homegrown guy. It's not going to be Coke that wins the belt. But it's something that'll get us through anyway until they finally figure out who they're going to drop it to.
Mm-hmm.
Adam Priest versus the Beast Mortos making his return, I think, for the first time since the Continental Classic. I think this was Beast Mortos' first match back. And it was a squash match. Beast Mortos wins handily. He debuts a new finisher. It was what did they call it? Portal to Hell or something like that. I can't remember. Destination Hellhole. That's what it was. And it was like a reverse body slam. So instead of a scoop slam where you're face to face and you pick him up like that, you pick him up the same way, but it's back to belly. So it's like this, and then he dumps him on his head with a pile driver.
Oh.
So, I mean, it sounds like he grabbed the waist like a regular pile driver on the way down. So it's not like it was like a reverse Michinoku driver, which would be insanely difficult and unsafe. He did grab him. He was safe about it, but it looked rough, which is great. But after that, Max Caster comes out to interrupt Mortos' celebration, and he calls out his first opponent for the open challenge, and out comes the returning Roosh in gear that was immaculate.
Oh yeah, I love.
He looked amazing. He looked like a star. Like he looked like a big freaking deal. He looked like a final boss. It was great. He had all the gold. He had the gauntlets and the big bull mask it was all gold. The big old cape with shoulder. It was fantastic. And he absolutely destroys Max Caster. So this is one of the best things on the show for me. Max Caster got destroyed by a rando that got called out. The rando turned out to be one of the most interesting performers on the roster. If Roosh can stay out of his own way, because he's his own biggest enemy in there.
Mm-hmm.
He's had start-stop pushes because he's talented, but he always seems to step in his own way and step in a pile of crap that he put there. If he can keep his nose clean, I see no reason not to push Roosh. And I feel like at the end of the match, he kind of got in Mortos' face. Wasn't able to make out all of what he said because most of it was in Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
And I know a little Spanish, but not a whole heck of a lot. I think probably what he was saying by the tone and the body language was probably like, "Don't upstage me. You knew I was here." Something along those lines. But what I thought was cool was that crowd chanted along with his catchphrase. That was cool. I don't think I've ever seen that before for him. You mess with the bull, you get the horns.
He looked like he didn't know what to do with that.
Yeah, like he
didn't expect him to do that.
Yeah, and then when it was only like half the crowd, he asked for it again so that he could get a bigger reaction, which I thought that was a really veteran move. He's like, okay, pivot. If they're gonna do it, let's have them really do it.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was clever and a good use of the time. Outrunners versus the Learning Tree is next. It wasn't like it was all right.
Yeah,
it was latter era Jericho stuff. I guess the most surprising thing was that I thought the Outrunners would be pinning Brian Keith, but instead it was the other way around. Behind the Magnum was pulled out of the ring when they were doing the Total Recall by Big Bill and beat up behind the referee's back, and Keith rolled up Floyd, taking advantage of it for the win.
Mm-hmm.
And then afterwards, Big Bill comes in and just absolutely decimates the Outrunners. Like, I would say that this is a bad thing, but this was after they had already had the match. It's not like they were two fresh guys who were over, being laid waste to by one guy, even if it is Big Bill. At least they'd been beat up beforehand. But yeah, Big Bill looked great.
Yeah, he did.
But yeah, they were gonna. Brian Keith was gonna set up a table so that Big Bill could hit a double choke slam. But then Bandito comes out and does take 2 of Supercard of Honor, basically, or Final Battle rather. So he comes out. He doesn't concuss himself this time, and he chases off the Learning Tree after beating up Jericho a little bit.
Yep.
And after putting Keith through the table.
Yeah.
Next up was Taya Valkyrie versus Harley Cameron, and I freaking called this too. Like, it wasn't difficult. That it was Taya. It wasn't a difficult call to make, given what they set up. But it's like I knew it wasn't going to be Deanna, but it would be Taya. Like, match was pretty good. I mean, it was back and forth. Taya's kind of slowed down since she got to AEW. Like, she was, even in NXT, she worked a little bit with a quicker pace. She definitely did when she was in TNA or Impact at the time. But like, she's slowed down a little bit, and she's not the performer that she used to be. So putting her in this spot as taking the surprise loss to Harley Cameron with a roll up, I'm okay with, because it's probably the role that she should be playing right now. Yeah, but Harley Cameron gets her first win on TV, guys.
Yeah, man.
Super exciting. Super duper exciting.
Totally awesome.
The crowd was so into it too. They were chanting "Feel the Wrath" at various points during the match. They were really, really into the finish. It was great. I imagine Deanna is probably next on her plate because she was watching backstage and she threw her chair in frustration. Once the finish came, I imagine that she's probably gonna take a fluke loss to her too, and then with 2 wins under her belt, Harley Cameron will finally be put in the TBS title slot for Grand Slam, most likely. I got in a kind of an argument with not an argument, but a discussion with people online about whether or not they should switch the belt. I don't think they should. I think that you've got enough Aussies on the card that some of them can lose. And Harley isn't really there yet. Like, I love Harley Cameron. Like, as a character, I don't think she can. I don't think she can do any wrong. Honestly, she's hilarious. She's entertaining. She's multi-talented. You'll see in a couple of segments here that she got talents that we didn't even know that she had.
Yeah.
But like I don't. Mercedes Moné, especially the last couple of months, has really, really elevated the TBS title. And I don't want to say that passing it to Harley Cameron would diminish it. But I don't think you can, especially after her 2 matches with Stat being all-timers, I don't think that you could really justify moving the TBS belt to Harley Cameron, who is only kind of just now getting into a rhythm of, oh, this is what wrestling in the ring is like. I don't think that's a good idea. And I don't think TK is going to do it either, because TK wants his champions to be in-ring worthy. Like, you look at every single list of his champions, and every single one of them, for the most part, were like good wrestlers, And Harley is learning, and she's learning quickly. And I want to give her a huge shout out, because she is adapting very, very well. Almost all of her matches have been on TV in front of cameras. Like, that is a very, very difficult thing to learn on the spot. And she has handled that pressure with incredible grace and poise. But I don't think she's ready to be a champ yet. I think she should come closer than Mercedes expects, and then Mercedes still pulls out a win, but kind of like give her the side eye as she walks away, like, I didn't realize you were that good. I need to watch out for you in the future. That kind of thing. I mean, because we know Toni Storm and Mariah May should main event that show. There's no reason it shouldn't.
Yeah.
And Toni should go over in Australia. There's no reason she shouldn't. As long as Toni goes over, I don't think any of the other Aussies losing is going to matter. Kyle Fletcher losing, he's a heel. Doesn't matter. They may cheer him anyway, but it doesn't matter. And maybe he doesn't even take the pin in that tag match. Maybe it's Takeshita, so that they can set up for Omega versus Takeshita for the international title or something. They're setting up Okada and Buddy Matthews. I don't really see Buddy Matthews winning against Okada. They could do it, but I don't see it. Not yet. Not without some more build-up. Without Buddy really ramping up and getting a few more upper-tier wins under his belt, get some momentum. But, the match will be good. The matches will all be good. But only Toni needs to win. Yeah. I think if Toni wins, all the other Aussies losing in various ways will be fine. Because Toni is the most over woman on the roster. Maybe the most overall performer on the roster. She may be.
I argue that, yeah.
So yeah, I feel like, give Cameron the shot, give her that hometown pop, and man, I'm gonna make a prediction right here. I'm gonna make a prediction. This is gonna be out there, but I think we see, in some way, shape, or form, the debut of the Inspiration on that show.
You mean the Iconics?
The former Iconics. They don't own that name.
Yeah, but
they don't own that name, but they own the Inspiration. It's in Australia. They're both from Australia. I mean, they would have to travel there because they live in America now. But you haven't seen them on TV in a long time. Cassie gave birth So, she's been out there. I don't know what Billy's done, but I think that the marketing is there for them as a tag team, as a tandem. I think that's where your marketing for them is. I think that if you introduce them, you add those two women to your roster, I think you can finally start seriously considering women's tag belts.
Yeah.
And normally I'm not for title expansion, but this is in the women's division, which has different rules.
Yeah.
Because they have, there are only 2 women's championships where there are 11,000 freaking men's championships. So the men don't need any more. The women, on the other hand, if you add an established tag team like that and take up some of the other ladies who aren't really doing anything, aren't being used on TV, and put them in teams, a lot of them have alliances already. The Vendetta are a thing. You can bring back the Jamie Hayter, Britt Baker thing if you wanted to. You could pair probably Riho and Yuka.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be a natural tag team. 2 little spunky Japanese women who people often underestimate because of their size. I think there's something there. I think you can make a division out of the women that you have.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna make that prediction. I think that we're gonna see the Inspiration debut on this show.
We'll see.
In any case, Ricochet gets his sit down interview, and he says that for years, since this place was formed, people were saying you should leave there and you should come to AEW with this is far more your style. He's like, and you know what? They're right. This was far more to my taste of how I wrestle and this, that, the other thing. And then I get here, and then people don't appreciate me, which is not untrue. the fact of the matter is that in the intervening time, a whole bunch of other guys have come in who do a lot of the same stuff that Ricochet does because they were influenced by Ricochet.
Yeah.
Whether either they are young enough where they grew up watching him, or they were influencing him because they were on the indies together and like, oh, I like that what that guy does. I'm gonna steal that. Like, so yeah, he's like, he turned it back on me, the whole thing. Then Swerve comes in, and she's like, he's like, Renee, I can take it from here. So Renee scoots, and he's like, he reminds him about where they've been, CZW, Lucha Underground. He's like, I never really, you and I never really saw eye to eye ever in the last 15 years. He's like, AEW has a way of exposing people for who they really are, which is an interesting way to look at it, I think. It's like, and Ricochet, you dress yourself up as a superhero, and they saw right through it. You ain't no superhero. And Ricochet is like, you know what? There's something to that. I had to pretend a lot for the sake of this business, for the sake of my employment, for the sake of the fans. But, I don't think that you're the biggest threat as you think you are. You haven't been you haven't really been the most dangerous man in AEW since Hangman pulled out your grill. You haven't been the same guy. And is like, you're not really a threat to me. And Swerve tries to like say essentially like, oh, I'm not a threat. He grabs the scissors that were in his pocket and holds them up to Ricochet's throat like Ricochet had him to AR Fox on Dynamite. And this is what I was talking about earlier about him not just being a cowardly heel, because Ricochet barely even registered it. He's like, he looks at him, he's like, what? He didn't say it, but he basically said, like, what are you going to do? Really? You're going to do this? I don't believe you.
Mm-hmm.
You're not dangerous anymore. Not like you think you are. The other thing that Swerve said earlier, I forgot to mention, is that he knows he's the villain and he's respected for it, which I thought was an interesting line. He knows he's the villain. He's okay with being the villain, which means he's never going to apologize to Hangman. Ever. He's never going to admit that what he did was wrong. Ever. He's never going to admit that what Hangman did to him was justified. Yeah, you saw that coming. Yeah. Just to let you know, because you can't see the video here, is as soon as I lean into the microphone, Aaron just pulls the headphone away from his ear because he knew I was gonna get real into it. But yeah, he's never. So I like that one line is like, okay, yeah. There's no redeeming you. Nope. Just resolve. Just put my resolve right back on Hangman. But yeah, that was a good segment, I think. Toni Storm comes out and she cuts this incredible promo. She's on the stage and everything is dark and she's got these spotlights on her, and she's like, it was so funny. It's like, I don't know if you realize this, but for the past 6 weeks, I've been playing the role of Toni Storm. Everybody's like, no, are you kidding me? That was you. I know. It's unbelievable. I love her so much. But yeah, she basically runs down Mariah, and you should look it up yourself because I'm going long. Match number 6. Oh no, Harley. Harley is being interviewed by Renee in the hall where she wants to get into Mercedes Monet's dressing room because she doesn't think she's there, and she's a little chaos gremlin, and she wants to ride the money train. But she has a Mercedes Monet puppet. Did you know that Harley Cameron was a ventriloquist?
No.
Because I didn't know that Harley Cameron was a ventriloquist.
Nope.
And she's a good one, too.
Yeah, she is.
She's a really good one.
It was weird.
Like, incredible. And so she was talking, and her impression of a Mercedes isn't that bad either, to be honest with her. Which is interesting because she has to do it through, like, clenched teeth. So, I mean, all the more impressive. So she's like, oh, yeah. So she's interviewing Mercedes, and she's like, oh, yeah, you know what? You impressed me with that win. You can get that title shot. But then the real Mercedes comes in, and she's like, no, you're not riding the money train. Get out of here. Get out of, I need to get into my dressing room. Which is weird because she didn't have a match. Why are people there and having dressing rooms when they don't have matches?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was there because, it was double taping. But in canon, there's no reason for her to be there. But yeah, Monet thinks she's a losers, and losers don't get to ride the money train. So, not yet, but they'll pull the trigger on it, and I'm excited for it. 3-way match for the AEW TNT Championship. Daniel Garcia. They did some really cool stuff. Danny Garcia, Kyle O'Reilly, Lee Moriarty. They started out like trading submission holds, which I don't think I've ever seen in a triple threat match before, ever. I mean, it doesn't work because why would it? Submissions in a triple threat match are really, really hard to pull off, and they even lampshaded it on commentary. But it was a different way to show off the skills of these three guys. They were trading a lot of holds and stuff like that. What I really liked about this match too was that it didn't follow as closely to the normal formula of a triple threat match as it usually does. There was a lot of all three guys in the ring at the same time beating the hell out of each other, instead of just like, oh, one guy's gonna powder so the other two can do some stuff for a couple minutes, and then the other guy's gonna powder and he's gonna be replaced by this guy, and then it did that a little bit because you kind of have to eventually, but like there was a lot of all three guys going at each other in this, and it was really refreshing. It's why it's important to get those young guys in there, because they're going to be your innovators. They're going to show you something different if you give them the platform to do so, and these guys are all excellent wrestlers. Eventually Garcia retains. He just uses a jackknife on Moriarty for the win after surviving a Border City stretch. But yeah, it was good. It was another nice win for Garcia. They're still building him. Shane Taylor Productions hits the ring afterwards, and like all the baby, Kyle and Garcia have to kind of fend them off. but then all the other associated baby faces associated with those guys show up. Like Cool Hand Edge appears out of the freaking crowd. He just kind of materializes out of nowhere and joins Matt Menard, who was on commentary, in the ring with them. And then Bebe hits, and it's all about the boom hits, and then the Undisputed Kingdom is in there. By the way, are the Kingdom still part of the Undisputed Kingdom?
I don't know,
because they haven't shown up with them since. I don't know. It's
a long time.
I need answers.
Yeah.
Anyway, the main event was the Mid-South Street Fight, and they came out wearing street clothes, which is recipe ingredient number one for a proper street fight. And this was all over the place. I'm running kind of long, so I'll just say that at one point, John Moxley takes a pair of pliers and right before the commercial break goes and just tries to essentially like clip Dax's nostril off or something. It was so gnarly. I'm glad they did that right as it went to the commercial. It was like, oh no, I gotta know what happened to Dax. Apparently he was fine. As predicted, everybody comes in. There's no DQs in this kind of match. So all the Death Riders are in. They're FTR is kind of like fighting them off though every now and then. Jay White and Cope are here at the very, very, very last second, and then they fight them off all the interlopers, and eventually, because of course it's Yuta, FTR gets Yuta on the announce table, and Wheeler, I think, is the one who picks him up for the pile driver, and Dax comes off of the guardrail, jumps onto the announce table with the spike pile driver.
Oh yeah.
And just the way that the table broke, it just looked incredible.
Oh, it was so awesome.
Amazing visual. I loved the finish. It was Falls Count Anywhere too, which I don't know if this is a Mandela effect thing, but I feel like all street fights from my youth were Falls Count Anywhere by default, and then somewhere along the line, WWE decided it had to end in the ring.
Yeah, basically.
I feel like maybe it was just I watched so much WCW and they always had Falls Count Anywhere street fights. I don't know, but yeah, no, it was great. It was a really cool way to end the show. I'm glad FTR finally got a win. After the match, Mox winds up by himself in the ring with all the baby faces. And he takes a Blade Runner from Jay White, a Shatter Machine, a Spear. And Jay White's like, hey, wait a minute. Hang on, I got an idea. He goes under the ring for a second chair because one was already in the ring. And they were going to do the concerto to Moxley before Marina pulls him, or Claudio pulls him to safety. It was like, oh, okay, here we go. This is what I wanted to see. I wanted to see more hope spots, basically. So, I thought it was another great episode of Collision. It ended with the baby faces going over, which was so nice to see the Death Riders lose. I think what should happen is FTR or Rated FTR should win the trios title before Edge Cope faces Mox, so that they're even more momentum and they finally do something with the trios title. But then Cope fails to beat Mox for the world title.
Yeah.
That way their program can end, but they still have trios champions who presumably would defend the belts more often.
Yeah.
And it looks like they're trying to build the trios division back a little bit with Undisputed Kingdom and all them. So hopefully that'll materialize.
Hope so.
In any case, that's it for the Hope Spot. And now we go to the hot tag.
Hot tag, baby.